Happy 4th of July to everyone watching and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be showing you how much dividend income I got from high yield ETFs as well as some of the moves I made this week. All right, we'll also cover some of the news that happened, so stay tuned. I'm still a small growing YouTube channel, so if you guys like this type of content, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new so you're alerted every time I publish a new video surrounding finance, news, stocks, and investing. I also run a free and open Discord if you're interested. Link will be pinned down below in the comment section. All right, with that out of the way, guys, let's hop over to the portfolio. So you guys can see that this portfolio value is really high. Did a whole migration, all that good stuff. It is sitting at a current portfolio value of $324,000. I still hold the same high yield positions, all right, with a new addition. All right, I still have the Palantir weekly pay from Roundhill, as well as the NVIDIA one, NVDW, Chippy from YieldMax, which is a semiconductor ETF, cover call ETF, XPay and XETE, which are, cover call ETFs for the S&P 500. These are both from Roundhill. I did add, and I'll go over it in a second, MSTY. So I did add MSTY to this portfolio. It's part of the whole Bitcoin strategy that I'm following. You can check that out. I'll put a card somewhere up here at the top so you guys can check that out, or maybe as a link in the description down below. Okay, so real quick, I got to hit you guys with this. You always know I got to hit you with a disclaimer. This is a very high risk portfolio. Please do not copy my trades, okay? I use all of my margin, every last ounce. So I still have about $4,000 worth of buying power that I need to deploy. All right, but this, margin status is low risk, okay? I would have to lose an account value or really, equity of up to 120,000 or 37% before I hit a margin maintenance call. All right, so this is possible. It can happen, right? We can have black swan events, all that kind of stuff. So the actual total account value is sitting at $643,000. But again, I have a lot of margin, so please keep that in mind. I used a margin to basically boost the overall yield of this portfolio to produce, higher levels of income. High risk type of play, but that's exactly how I play this. So I did add a new position, like I said, and that was the YieldMax MSTR option income strategy ETF. You guys can check out that video and get a better idea of why I added this. But here's the addition, right? I added $50,000 or purchased about, 2,400 shares of MSTY. And we had a decent dividend payout. I think it was like $1.27 recently, but that will actually be coming next week. So I won't be covering that in this video. We'll skip this. I added a couple shares of MSTR. It was kind of down in the dumps during the week. So instead of waiting for that dividend income to come from MSTY, I ended up just purchasing a MicroStrategy with some free cash or buying power that I did have. With PLTW, I did add to this position. All right, there was a huge dip right here. There was a huge dip. It dropped well over 12 to 15%, and I found this to be an excellent opportunity to hop in. Right, Palantir itself, PLTR, ended up dropping, I think, around 9.77%. So this ETF dropped, around the 14%, 15% range. So I found that to be a great buying opportunity. So I ended up picking up additional shares. So I ended up buying an additional 250 shares or $10,000 worth. So that was really cool. So hopefully, this will recover. It does look like it's recovering. And, with the OBBB passing, I think this is only going to add further fuel to Palantir's growth. But let me digress. I also added the SGOV, or the short-term 0 to 3 month treasury bond ETF from iShares. All right, I have a whole video of why I added a bond ETF or a treasury bond ETF to this portfolio. You guys can check that out. Again, I'll put a card somewhere up here so you guys can check it out. But it is people have mixed feelings about adding treasuries or bonds to their portfolios. I list out my reasons and reasons why. Again, it's my portfolio, not yours. You do not have to copy something like this. All right. So, but I do appreciate everyone's kind of thought process or everyone's insight or perspectives. Reading some of the comments have been, very kind of eye-opening. So anyways, moving on, again, just purchased about 499 shares of this, so about $50,000 worth. And again, this is a flexible position, so I can add and remove from it as I need to. But, again, with some things coming up in the very near future, I just want to make sure this portfolio is protected and that I have cash available. And it's also basically where I'm going to dump some of the dividend income that I get to help cover taxes for next year. So just my thoughts. All right. So that was pretty much it for the high yield stuff. Now let's talk about how much dividend income I actually got from all these positions. So since this was a holiday week, it was kind of weird. But yeah, I only got paid from PLTW and NVDW, and I only got paid $850. So, that was actually really, really cool. So hopefully we have, further good weeks for Palantir slash PLTW, because then those payouts are just going to get bigger. So next week, because we have basically a backlog of dividend income coming in, this week is going to be explosive. I'm predicting it's going to be around 35 to maybe probably even $4,000, right? Because we had not only the MSTY dividend payout, but we also had all the other dividends that weren't paid out for this week that will be paid out next week, right? So that is really, really interesting, really, really cool. So this might be one of the bigger payouts that I've ever had. All right, so let's move into some news that happened this week, all right? Because there was a lot, all right? And the hottest one that dropped was President Donald Trump's tax bill finally got passed, okay? Whether you love him or hate him, it is what it is. We as investors, we just need to take it in, digest, and figure out how we can tactically move about, the landscape and put our money to work where where we think it's going to be best utilized, right? That's what we are. We're investors. All right, so real quick, U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday afternoon signed his sweeping tax cut and spending package known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, securing the biggest legislative victory during his second term in office. A lot of people have been asking, what are some moves we can make? What are some ideas, to keep in the back pocket so we can, deploy cash and things like that. Honestly, I mean, if you read the bill, he kind of tells you, the bill contains $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, so that's essentially, in my mind, probably going to flood the stock market, right? There will be a flood of money hitting the stock market and crypto, okay? But a CBO report said it will raise the deficit by 3.3 trillion over the next 10 years. This little piece, you can kind of surmise that, the stock market and crypto are going to have a lot of tailwinds behind them. All right, so we also had some really breaking news come out, and this is also what drove the stock market to newer highs on Thursday. So let's listen in. And this is from the jobs payroll, that report that came out.
Shortly, obviously, it's the big June jobs report. I wouldn't look for this to make an easy more likely. 147,000 jobs. Definitely a bit better than expected, no matter what your range was, whether it was closer to 100 or 115,000. It's a pretty good number. And guess what? If we look at the 2-month revision, it's positive. It's up 16,000. How does 147 stack up? Well, it's pretty odd because it's exactly where we were in April, unless they revise that to find a...
So essentially, we had a really good jobs report come in at 147,000 versus the consensus 137,000, and some people were predicting it was about 110,000. So the jobs report was absolutely smashed, and this sent the S&P 500 to new all-time highs. So we did really, really well. All right. We also had some other news come out that the U.S. lifts the chip software curbs on China in a sign of a trade truce. So this is huge news. All right. Because we're waiting on, any type of news related to semiconductors, right? Related to the semiconductor space. As you guys know, I own a cover call ETF Chippy from YieldMax that has basically all U.S. listed semiconductor companies within the ETF, right? And they do cover calls, for income. So I'm very bullish on the semiconductor space. I'm very bullish on that space, continuing to reach new highs. So this was really, really good news right here. It's not exactly good news for NVIDIA or AMD yet, or even, Broadcom, Qualcomm, TSMC, all those other ones. But this is a step in the right direction, okay? So this is a good positive sign that trade talks are at least going good. So we can expect some type of news to come out in the next couple of weeks, if it's not already out in the next week or two, that there is a good agreement between the United States and China, and NVIDIA, AMD, and all those semiconductors can start shipping their chips back to China. And this, in my opinion, will probably be a very good tailwind for NVIDIA, and we could see NVIDIA possibly reach new all-time highs. It's already reached new all-time highs, but I think we can go higher. So just my commentary on all of that. We also had Microsoft cutting 4% of jobs amid hefty AI bets, right? So they cut 9,000 people out of their company. And, we spoke about this on one of the lives that, yes, artificial intelligence is coming and it's coming for jobs, right? It's going to affect every industry, all industries. You already have robotics starting to kind of bleed into into warehouses, which I'll cover here in a moment. But you also have artificial intelligence putting developers, software developers, coders, programmers, out of business. Artificial intelligence can basically replace copywriters, can replace people who do videos, even video editing. There's a lot of stuff that AI can do now, and it's starting to impact a lot of different sectors, within the economy. So as AI continues to move about and be adopted, mass adoption, it's only going to get worse for people getting cut or removed from jobs. So if you're looking for companies to invest in, unfortunately, I hate to say it that way, but we are capitalists when you invest. If you're looking for ways to put your money in, Microsoft could be a bet, especially for the AI thesis. Palantir, of course, is my top favorite. It's my top pick, and it's the one I'm betting the most money on. But, you have companies like Palantir that they're not only a DoD-specific artificial intelligence company, but they can also be used for the finance sector, manufacturing. So I really am betting big on Palantir. All right, so moving on, we have Amazon also in the news. And they deployed its 1 millionth robot in a sign of more job automation, right? This is Amazon replacing humans with robots. So again, this is just a sign of our times. And as investors, we need to adjust accordingly. As hardworking Americans, we need to adjust accordingly. And just remember to keep your skills sharp, all right? So yes, I just wanted to put this out there because this is actually big news. All right. This is more automation coming to the U.S. economy. And we also have Trump saying that the U.S. struck a trade deal with Vietnam that imposes 20% tariff on its imports. So this was also big news. All right. So basically, the agreement includes a 20% U.S. tariff on Vietnam goods, as well as a 40% transshipping tariff. All right. And what the United States gets in, return is unrestricted access, whatever that means, or total access to the Vietnamese market. So, maybe companies like Walmart or Amazon can start shipping things there. Who knows what this actually means? Maybe the automakers, maybe the automakers can start shipping their cars there without getting hit with, or levied with a bunch of tariffs or taxes. So, again, this could be a good tailwind just for, companies in whatever buckets that are going to benefit from these tariffs. All right. So I haven't actually read the entire thing regarding these Vietnamese tariffs, but, just at a high level, I think this is obviously good for the stock market in general. All right. We also have Trump's tariff pause is set to expire, threatening a trade war flare-up. Now, I put this out. July 9th is coming out. All right. July 9th is coming down. It's not too far out. And we could see a double dip. Okay, it is quite possible to see a double dip. Now, I didn't include this in my market prediction video, but I am including it in this one. But can we see a double dip? What is the possibility of a double dip, right? So we still have major banks, predicting that there's going to be a 35 to 45% drop. We still have these major institutions predicting that, right? And of course, this is within the next 6 to 12 months, right? So it really depends on these trade escalations. If we don't get these deals finalized, and if they're not favorable, and if this actually sparks a trade war, then we can probably see some things go really, really bad in the future, right? It's just something that I'm keeping an eye on, something that I'm keeping on for my own portfolio, right? But a recession could possibly follow in the next 6 to 12 months, because nobody's going to be importing anything if these tariffs are really high. The cost of goods are going to increase, et cetera. You guys already know the spiel, all right? And then that could also cause a Fed tightening, right? We can end up in an inflationary or a sticky inflation or a stagflation scenario where the Fed may potentially have to raise interest rates. Of course, we're trying to see interest rates come down and get more money back into the general market, and then have the government and companies and corporations refinance their debt. But if interest rates rise, that would be a huge problem. And I could definitely see a double dip possibly happening. All right. Again, bottom line is recession odds are 30 to 45%. We could possibly see a double dip. It is very possible. It depends on what Donald Trump does with these tariffs. All right. And how they're actually impacting not only, the partners that we're trying to do trade deals with, but also America in general. Right. Not guaranteed. All right, markets have stayed sharp rebounds after similar shocks. You have the Black Monday way back when, and then early tariff pauses, all right, where we saw a 30%, basically a 30% dip and then a 9% jump, right? Never have I ever seen the S&P 500 jump 9%. So that was a really crazy day in the stock market. So outside of that, guys, that is pretty much going to do it for this portfolio update. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got a little bit of your news digest and some commentary, some things to think about for the future. Outside of that, hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Go touch some grass, get away from the finance stuff. All right, enjoy, be present, have a beer if you can, and I will see you guys on Monday. You guys have a wonderful day. Take care.